We often think of trauma as an event, something that happened once, long ago, that should have ended the moment it was over. But trauma is not the event itself. Trauma is the imprint the event leaves on the brain, on the body, and on the soul. The brain is designed to protect us. Its purpose is survival. When trauma enters, the brain takes that moment and carves it deeply into memory as a warning. Never let this happen again. And while this instinct is meant to keep us safe, it can also trap us. The brain begins to confuse survival with repetition. It builds loops of fear, patterns of avoidance, and habits of self-sabotage. You are not weak when you feel stuck. You are simply caught in the wiring of a brain that believes it is saving you. Think of it like a smoke alarm that keeps ringing long after the fire has been put out. The alarm is not broken. It is just hyper-alert. Trauma tricks the brain into believing that danger is always present, even in safe spaces, even with safe people. This is why you may freeze when you want to act, shut down when you want to speak, or retreat when you want to connect. The brain is trying to protect you, but it ends up imprisoning you. The challenge, then, is not to erase the past. The challenge is to retrain the brain, to show it that the danger is gone, that the alarm can quiet down. Healing begins when you bring awareness to these patterns and gently interrupt them. With breath, with therapy, with connection, with courage, you begin to tell your brain a new story. A story where survival is no longer the only goal, where growth and love and freedom are possible. Trauma is powerful, but so is the human spirit. The same brain that learned to stay stuck can also learn to move forward. The same memory that carries pain can also carry resilience. You are not broken. You are not trapped forever. You are simply being called to unlearn what fear taught you and relearn what safety feels like. So remember this. Trauma may have shaped your brain, but it does not define your destiny. The moment you decide to step out of the loop, to question the story, to reclaim your power, you begin the journey of becoming unstuck. And that journey begins not in the past, but right here, in this very moment. Trauma rewires the brain in ways that are both invisible and deeply powerful. The brain is designed to keep us alive, and when something painful or overwhelming happens, it encodes that memory not just as a story, but as a survival lesson. Trauma tells the brain, remember this, never let this happen again. In doing so, the brain reshapes its wiring, carving pathways of fear, hypervigilance, and avoidance. This is why trauma does not simply pass with time. Even long after the event has ended, the brain continues to live as if the danger is still present. The process is not conscious. You may not even realize it is happening, but your choices, your reactions, and your patterns are influenced by these hidden loops. A loud sound may cause your body to freeze before your mind has time to process it. A relationship that feels too close may trigger the instinct to pull away. You might find yourself sabotaging opportunities not because you do not want them, but because your brain has linked growth with risk and risk with harm. Trauma shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. One of the ways trauma rewires the brain is through the amygdala, the part responsible for detecting threat. After trauma, the amygdala becomes hypersensitive, quick to sound the alarm. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that reasons and calms, struggles to quiet that alarm. The hippocampus, which normally helps distinguish between past and present, can blur those lines, making old memories feel like current dangers. Together, this creates a cycle where the past intrudes on the present, keeping you locked in survival mode. This rewiring is why trauma survivors often describe feeling stuck. It is not simply about willpower or positive thinking. The brain has literally been trained to respond in a way that prioritizes safety above all else, even at the cost of growth and joy. The very mechanisms designed to protect you become barriers that hold you back. It is not weakness. It is the brain doing what it believes it must do to keep you alive. Understanding this can be liberating. When you realize that your struggles are not signs of failure, but the results of a brain shaped by trauma, you can approach healing with compassion rather than shame. The same plasticity that allowed trauma to rewire your brain is the same plasticity that allows for healing through intentional practices, therapy, mindfulness, safe relationships, and repeated experiences of calm and trust. The brain can learn new patterns. It can learn that not every sound is a threat, that not every risk ends in harm, that safety and growth can coexist. Trauma may have rewired the brain, but the story does not end there. Just as trauma taught the brain to stay stuck, healing can teach it to move forward. Every breath, every safe connection, every act of courage begins to reshape those neural pathways, proving that while trauma changes the brain, it does not have to define your life. The metaphor of the alarm that will not stop captures exactly how trauma operates in the brain. When a fire breaks out in a home, the smoke alarm blares to alert you of danger. Its job is to keep you safe, to wake you up, to make sure you act quickly. But imagine if the alarm kept ringing long after the fire had been put out. Even when the room is clear, even when the air is safe, the noise continues. That is what trauma does inside the brain. It keeps the alarm on, creating the feeling that danger is still here, even when life has moved on. The amygdala, which acts like the brain's smoke alarm, becomes overly sensitive after trauma. It fires at the smallest cues, interpreting neutral situations as threats. A sound, a smell, a tone of voice. Things that would not bother someone else and feel unbearable. The body reacts instantly. The heart races, the muscles tense, the breath shortens. To the outside world, it may look like an overreaction, but inside, the brain is convinced the fire is still burning. This is why trauma survivors often feel on edge, anxious, or easily startled. The alarm never really quiets. At the same time, the brain struggles to distinguish between past and present. The hippocampus, which normally helps sort memories and ground you in time, becomes less effective under the weight of trauma. This is why flashbacks feel so real, as though the painful moment is happening again. Even when you know logically that you are safe, the body acts as though the threat is alive in the room. The alarm is not just loud, it is relentless. Living with a constant alarm is exhausting. It drains energy, it erodes confidence, it makes trust difficult. People caught in this cycle may withdraw, avoid risks, or numb themselves because the constant noise of the alarm feels unbearable. Trauma tricks the brain into believing that vigilance is safety, but in reality, it only deepens the feeling of being stuck. The irony is that the very mechanism meant to protect you begins to imprison you. Healing begins by understanding that the alarm is not your enemy. It is your brain's attempt to guard you, even if the method is flawed. When you learn to notice the alarm without panicking, when you teach the body to calm itself with breath, grounding, or safe connection, the alarm begins to quiet. The brain slowly learns that not every signal means danger. With practice and support, new neural pathways form, allowing you to feel safe again in the present. The alarm may ring too often after trauma, but it is not permanent. The same brain that became hyper, alert, can also learn peace. The same system that was trained to survive can be retrained to live fully. The alarm will not define you forever. With awareness, patience, and healing, you can teach it when to sound and when to rest. Healing means relearning because trauma does not simply fade with time. It teaches the brain and body lessons that are often untrue yet feel real. When someone experiences trauma, their nervous system learns to associate survival with certain behaviors, freezing when afraid, shutting down when overwhelmed, avoiding closeness to prevent rejection, or lashing out to feel in control. These responses become automatic, hardwired into daily life. The problem is that while they once served a purpose, they no longer fit the present moment. The brain clings to old rules. Trust is dangerous. Vulnerability leads to pain. Risk equals harm. Healing requires unlearning those rules and replacing them with new ones. It is not forgetting the past, but retraining the mind to live differently in the present. Relearning starts with awareness. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see. Many people blame themselves for being stuck, believing they are lazy, unmotivated, or broken. In reality, their brains are following the survival scripts trauma left behind. Recognizing that these are learned responses, not flaws, is the first step toward freedom. When you notice the pattern without judgment, you create space for change. Awareness shifts the narrative from "this is who I am" to "this is what I learned," and I can learn something new. The process of relearning requires safe experiences that contradict the old lessons. If trauma taught you that the world is unsafe, healing involves gently exposing yourself to moments of safety until your nervous system begins to believe it. If trauma taught you that your voice does not matter, healing comes from practicing expression in supportive environments until your voice feels strong again. Repetition is crucial because the brain learns through consistent practice. Every time you choose a new response, you lay down a new neural pathway, and over time, the brain begins to favor that path instead of the old one. Relearning also means embracing patience. Trauma responses are not undone overnight because the brain was wired to prioritize survival above all else. Each small step forward, whether it is staying calm during a trigger, choosing to trust, or daring to take a risk, is a victory. Healing is not linear. There will be setbacks, but setbacks do not erase progress. Each time you return to the practice of relearning, you strengthen the signal that says growth is possible. Ultimately, healing through relearning is about reclaiming choice. Trauma robs people of choice by making their reactions automatic, but relearning restores agency. You begin to respond rather than react. You start to live by intention rather than fear. This shift is where true freedom emerges. The past may have shaped your responses, but it does not have to define your future. Relearning teaches the brain that survival is not the only goal anymore. Growth, joy, love, and connection become possible again. Healing is not erasing who you were, but guiding your mind and body to rediscover who you can become. And that is how relearning turns survival into transformation.